Hello and welcome to The Bounce, the flagship NBA podcast powered by Stadium Rant. I am your host, Kev. With me is my wonderful co host, James, and we're going to dive right into it. And, James, we're going to talk about yesterday's news.
Yesterday's news, Kev. The question I've got for you is: are the Lakers the worst shooting team in the history of America ever in the game of basketball ever?
They, they might. They might be. Someone's going to come up with a stat, I hope, and say no. Actually, in this obscure year, maybe there's some Charlotte Bobcats team that maybe was worse. But yeah, I cannot fathom what was the now James. I will say that they
It's
did improve, right? They now Pat Bev,
so
they
they
improved.
shoot. So they shoot last night, man. They shot 26% from three last night. They were 8 of 30, which for anybody that doesn't know basketball, doesn't know stats, it's awful. It's so bad. And Pat Bev's post game comments, non satire, not joking, nothing, says we improved. We shot 20% the night before. We shot 26 last night. That's a 6% improvement. And I saw that quote and I'm just like, it's wild. Like, and he was being serious.
I see this as an
Serious.
absolute win. I don't. Yeah,
Like,
I.
don't mind that they're losing. That doesn't matter. Like, they can't shoot. They're shooting 22.3% from three on the year. The year. That's awful.
It's bad.
Awful.
Yeah, it's bad for a high school team. So much of this, we all know what the problem is. That's why it's so infuriating. I think we
That,
know that LeBron needs shooters. Who did they go and
mhm.
sign in the offseason? Toscano, Lonnie Walker,
They
right? Pat
trade.
Bev.
They traded for Pat Bev. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
and the recipe is the year that they won the title in his best teams in Cleveland and Miami. When you put him out there and you've got shooters everywhere around him, it's his best. He's the best playmaker in the league. Give him all that space, and they've got a bunch of dudes out there that can't shoot better than me and you right now. Barely, maybe just a little bit, but not much, man. Not much.
On open looks too, and it's bad. And yes, and LeBron had a bad game last night. I think we all know it. 8 turnovers. That's unacceptable. He knows that. That's a bad game. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what can this team do? This looks like a lottery team right now. I know you hear the narrative all the time. Well, you take LeBron and AD off this team, it's a lottery team. No,
They
it might be a lottery team
no,
today.
they're 0-4, and they are a lottery team right now, unless mega changes happen. And that's the question. Like, what can you do? Like, the offseason's passed. They can't sign any shooters right now. LeBron talked about post game last night, like he needs to be more aggressive. And I was like, I agree, but that doesn't fix the guys shooting the ball around him. I saw Austin Reeves is shooting 40% on the year, but he's not. He's taking just a few shots, and he's not proven or anything. And it's I don't know, dude.
And that touches on something I was talking about before with Toscano and Pat Bev and Lonnie Walker. Like you said, these aren't volume shooters. Austin Reeves not a volume shooter, so they went and got a bunch of guys who shoot in the low 30% when they're taking 1 to 3 3 pointers a
Yeah,
game. Now
so
you're
they're
asking them,
all
yeah, shoot.
right, just
And
all
now they're
right.
shooting 6 to 8 times a game, and their percentage is down to 17. Like, no, these were not. Though this is why you can't just be a stat head. These were guys who were taking the most open of 3 pointers in their previous roles, and they were taking them not quite as frequently, and they weren't being asked. Lonnie Walker at no point, correct me if I'm wrong, was he ever asked to be the third option, and a go-to option in an offense? I don't think that they have. It's clearly not just Russ. We saw
No, and
that
that was
yesterday.
he didn't play yesterday, so that narrative kind of it didn't come to a screeching halt. It's still there, but that's the cloud looming over him. Is what do you do with him too? Because he doesn't shoot the ball at all. He can't shoot. So then
You
you've
can't.
added, like, when he plays, it looks kind of like he may have lost some of that athleticism too, that it gets him to the rim. So he can't do that. Also can't shoot. Add him with LeBron and AD, and then two non-shooters out there, and it's like, whoo,
And that's not even to get into his decision making.
yeah,
I don't have the video. I wish I had it to pull up for you, but we all know what I'm talking about right now. The Blazers game, the pull-up jumper was the
beautiful,
first
beautiful.
attempt. Absolutely, wasn't it? Poetry in motion, exactly how they draw it up. So much so that it was the first time in 4 years that anyone in that situation with the lead, with that
Mhm.
shot clock, has taken a jump shot from that far. First time in 4 years anyone in the
There's
league
like
has done it.
17 seconds left on the clock, on the shot clock, I think, and then
Yep.
the post game comments on that one too are great. He was talking about going for a 2-for-1. They had the lead. Don't like okay, whatever. And then the defense talking about how like, oh, we just sagged off and like we were baiting them into taking that every time, and like decision making, like you're talking about, like you got to know that if you're gonna go for a 2-for-1 and they're sagging off you, go get to the rim, try to score it, like lay it up, not
Yeah.
Brick
Not the
City.
not the time of the game to be giving the defense what they want. And his strategy was great for the end of the third quarter, right? Like
Yeah,
again,
first quarter,
what
second quarter, third.
time,
Yeah, 100 2-for-1. Let's do it.
time and a
And
place.
time and score doesn't matter apparently.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic and we're talking about shooters, meanwhile in Indianapolis, Buddy Hield continues to shoot at a very efficient rate. And as they say, the price is probably going to go up. Yesterday's price is not today's price, and so
Hmm.
as if this continues to implode, uh, it's going to get harder and harder for the Lakers. They thought they didn't want to move off of those two picks.
Hmm.
They have to have given up on that at this point. Like those two picks are gone if you want
Yeah,
to build a winner around LeBron now.
yeah. You have to make some type of move. You have to do something. Like you said, they could have got him in the summer to fix some of those shooting woes, and now he's shooting better. Then the Pacers are just going to want more for him. Just the reality of it, and it's tough luck right there. Gotta know. You got to know what you got.
Exactly, exactly. And I will move us on, I guess, from the Lakers because we could talk about them all day, and I'm sure we'll get back to them at some point, maybe even later on in this show. But there's another team on the struggle bus yesterday. The 76ers
Hmm.
fell again. They are now what, 1-4.
Yep.
Um, and it's looking like that project has also failed. What do you think that game was? Was that more about Philly for you or more about the Raptors?
Ooh, I think it's more about Philly. We know who the Raptors are. It's a limited ceiling. They're good, not great. Phillies is just such an interesting thing. Like, so I was digging through the box score today, and if you just check lines, go through Maxi, Harden, Embiid, Harris, like the stats look good. Like they're pretty solid. Some great, some good. And then you start looking at defensive numbers, efficiency numbers, like they are atrocious on the defensive end. I don't think they practiced it. It's bad over there. And just like they're different from the Lakers, they've got the pieces, but it just isn't working.
It's not
It,
working. Yeah, they went through all. I mean, look at what they went through this summer. All the tampering allegations. Harden
mhm.
took the deal. They went and assembled Daryl Morey's dream team. They got
Yep.
basically everyone who's ever done business with the man. They got PJ Tucker. They got some defense. Uh,
Hmm.
where and it's just it hasn't gelled yet. It's not looking
No.
good. And I don't know at this point. We were get to some of our other surprises for the early season this year, but this one was one I really expected more out of this team early on.
I would agree. You knew the defensive stuff. Harden's never been a defensive guy. We've all known that. However, you thought their individual stats are great on offense, but it's just not meshing well, and their overall efficiency and all that is just not great. And it's they're 1-4. They've got a bad loss too. They lost to San Antonio, who is part of Tankapalooza's this year for the number one draft pick, and it's just a bad loss.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't, especially early on. Like you can't have those. You can't have those losses.
No,
It's and so that kind of wraps up where we have for yesterday's news. We're going to slow it down for a minute and do a proper intro because we wanted to jump in, get to the action. But
Mhm.
this is our first show, so we want to let you know just a little bit about us and our credentials, why it is that we think we should be speaking into these mics.
Mhm.
So I'll go ahead and start first because my resume is less impressive. So
Now,
real
now, now, now,
quickly.
now.
I am a former basketball player and a manager for the University of Toledo men's basketball team, practice player for the women's team, an OSHA certified official, officiated some high school games, club sports, stuff like that, intramurals. And that's about it. I've been covering basketball for the Last Word on sports now, an editor over there for the last 2 years. So highly involved in the sport. I was a traveling manager back in the day, editing game film, all that stuff. So went with the team, rode the bus, all that stuff. A lot of experience near the game. Just uh, didn't quite have the stroke to make it to the big time. James, what about you? What's your background?
Well, we're both former Maction guys, man. I was at Bowling Green for a year. I was a little bit after you, but also did not know you played. I missed that somewhere in all our
I did not
collaborations.
play at Toledo. Correct. I
Okay,
was no, no,
okay,
no. I was a manager and a practice player for the women's team.
okay. Got it,
No,
got it. Yeah,
no, no, no.
yeah. No. So I was a graduate assistant for Wichita State for 2 years, and I backdoored my way into one of the luckiest, best situations I've ever been in. We went to the Final Four one year and went undefeated the next year. So that was my 2 years as a GA, my entry into the business. Then I went, like I said, I was at Bowling Green for a year. So Maction. We also lost to
Yes,
Toledo that year. So yeah,
you
can't
can
get over that
tell.
one.
I was definitely gone by then.
Yeah, you were gone. It was just a few years after that, and then I was at Indiana State University on the men's side for the last 7 years. 6 years as the director of basketball operations, and 1 year as a special assistant to the head coach. I got out of the business this summer. Shout out to some former guys I've worked with in the league. Fred Van Vliet for the Raptors. He was with us for 2 years. I was with him for 2 years at Wichita State. I wouldn't really say I worked with him much. I was a graduate assistant. He kind of ran the show. But then the newest one is Jake Laravia for the Memphis Grizzlies. Was at Indiana State for 2 years, and then before he transferred to
Yeah.
Wake. So I got to go to his draft party this year, and he's a great kid, and I wish nothing but the best for him.
Nice. Yeah. See, I know the closest I've shared a court with Draymond Green and Lance
Nice,
Stevenson,
nice. Oh
but they
boy.
didn't know who
Oh,
I was. I was lucky enough to accidentally bump into Tom Izzo one time, and he was very polite to me.
what
So that's about
one
my
my only experience being on an NBA court was when I was at Wichita. There was a preseason game there. It was the old Thunder, the big three back in the day was KD, Russ, and James Harden, and somebody else's preseason game. And I'll never forget the quote. We were the guys underneath the rim rebounding, and then we had to mop the sweat up. And the guy comes up, and the guy slips or something. We clean it up, and he goes, "Hey guys, not to sound mean here or anything, but I'm not saying his life, his body's more valuable than yours, but I am saying that right now." $30 million guy per year falls on the court, slips on sweat. He's like, "I'm not saying it's your fault, but just don't let it happen again."
don't let it happen again. Oh, that is fantastic. Well, that had to be a bit of a surprising moment, and we have experienced our fair share of surprises early in this.
Hmm.
Is it infant in the NBA's infancy? I don't know.
Very
It's pretty
infancy.
close. Yeah.
Four or 5 games in. We're not too far in yet.
So this takes us to a little segment called Surprise, Surprise. And James, we're just going to talk about the good and the bad so far
Yep.
throughout the league, both team wise. I got some players lined up that I've been
Hmm.
surprised. Who's somebody or what are your two surprises so far?
My first one, we talked about this. Anthony Simmons went nuclear a couple days ago.
Oh
Went
yes,
absolutely nuts. For anybody that hasn't seen this, doesn't know this, they played the Nuggets on Monday. This man scored 22 in the third quarter. They were down at half. He scores 22 in the third quarter. We've got a shot chart pulled up there. He hit 6 straight threes, and they were coming off ball screens, guys in his face, sizing dudes up. It was unbelievable. You talk about heat check games, like this was it. And most of the time, the heat check happens and it ends. His just kept going. He finished with 29 points. He had 5 assists, which is funny because he's actually only shooting 34.1% from three this year, but he hit 6 straight. He was 7 for 12 in the game, and that leads
streaky.
into very streaky. It leads into the Trailblazers are one of my biggest surprises on the year right now. 4-1. Obviously, we know Dame Lillard's really really good. He's averaging 31 points a game. It's his career high, shooting 39.2% from three. They've got wins over some big teams: Phoenix, Denver. I got LA on a big win. Is what it is. Top 10 defensive rated. They're just Lillard and Anthony Simmons are great together. They signed Jeremy Grant in the offseason, he's fit in seamlessly and really helped them on the defensive side. And then Nurkic, not averaging as many points as he usually does, but he's still averaging a double double, and he looks maybe like he's finally healthy. He's had those injury issues, that nasty injury a few years ago, and he looks healthy. But this first week, the Trailblazers are. I got two teams that I've got as my big surprises, and they're one of them.
I'm going to jump in there and add one of my surprises to this because Shaden Sharp was someone that I had my eye on
Hmm.
going back through into draft coverage, where he was like the enigma of the draft, right? You could see the potential that was everyone who had watched him play saw the pure offensive ability, but he hadn't played any real
Hmm.
competitive games in a year. So what were we going to see? And it's been kind of inconsistent, but I've seen some flashes of him out on the open court, making plays, delivering through contact. I think Shaden Sharp has been a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't expect him
Hmm.
to do this much this early, at least.
Hmm. I would agree with that 100%. It's it's interesting. It used to be these guys needed time to get acclimated. It just doesn't. There's some dudes in there that are young and killing it right now. Your boy Mahurin for the Pacers, man, coming off the bench is having a heck of a start too.
Benny, yes, I'm going to take that opportunity to talk about my surprise there. Yeah, Benedict Mathurin with his 104 points coming off the bench for the
Hmm.
Pacers is the first Pacer rookie in franchise history to score more than 100 points in his first 5 games. And again, he's doing it with a limited role coming
Hmm.
off the bench. So wow, he is that dude. We Pacers fans were very hyped about this. Of
Hmm.
course, there were people like me that were just delusional and holding out that maybe Jaden Ivey would fall or
Yep.
something like that. But Benny was the no doubt number two. A lot of people's number one. Like this guy is a bucket.
Hmm.
And what's going to be interesting to tie this back to the Russ conversation, maybe the one thing that
Hmm.
the Lakers have going for them in that particular trade negotiation is right now there is a bit of a traffic jam out on the wings in Indiana. They
Hmm.
have Duarte, who has struggled a bit, but he's a talented guy who they have some faith in. He played well last year. They've got Buddy Hield there, who clearly is a trade asset, and then you've got Mathurin, who is clearly like he's ready for more minutes, probably
Yeah.
right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes up. Oh, a very exciting 12-win team we'll be watching in Indianapolis this year.
Right.
What about our bummers? Like who's been a negative surprise on your end?
We talked about the Lakers and 76ers already. The one I had pulled up is the Brooklyn Nets move. They lost to the Bucks last night. They go to 1-3. We'll talk about Ben Simmons here in a second. The first one is we talked about how bad the 76. Yeah, we'll talk about that. The 76ers defense is bad. The before the game last night, I didn't get the updated rating, but the Brooklyn Nets defensive rating as of before last night was worst in the NBA at 124.7. Like they're just absolutely awful on defense, and we've known Kyrie's stance on defense, but they're not getting it done. And then with Ben Simmons on the floor, he hadn't played in 2 years. He used to be like one thing you could really count on him for is he was good defensively, quick, athletic, jump passing. He's not doing any of it. I don't know if he's lost that athleticism, if the back zapped it from him, if it's the two. It's probably a combination of that and the 2 years off. They have been very, very disappointing.
Agreed. Yeah, and with Ben, I know there was a little bit of a tale of two halves in that game against the Bucks, where I know there it was the talk of Ben's shutting Giannis down, and
Hmm.
that script flipped rather quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of it I do think has to be the game shape, right? You can
Hmm.
you can't simulate that. Sometimes you just
No.
have to get out there, and when you combine that with a dude who had multiple games now with early foul trouble. So
They
he's
fouled out.
not
He fouled out. He's fouled out twice, right? I
is he
think he fouled out two
okay.
games this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so then it's just sort of I don't know. I'm not ready to completely bury him defensively yet, but when you have your teammates yelling to shoot the ball,
Hmm.
something is still not fixed upstairs. It's been 2 years and that
Yeah.
part it still isn't fixed, I don't think.
He just won't shoot the ball. That play Kev's talking about was last night. Kyrie throws it to him. He's in the paint, and instead of trying to go for a layup or floating it in, he turns and throws it to KD, who's way, way, way back there. He's behind the 3-point line, and you can see Kyrie just yelling at him. And the stats speak for themselves. He's averaging a career low 5.3 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game. He's an awful free throw shooter, 33% from the line. Can't shoot threes. He is still averaging 7.5 assists per game, but if he's not a threat to score, it's almost like the Westbrook thing where you just sag way off and don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it can completely change the way you rotate on defense.
Hmm.
You can just put your best roamer on him, and now all of a sudden you're playing some weird, like, man zone hybrid, where you're
Hmm.
going to have the ability to have the defensive advantage in the half court almost every time. So yeah, when you have a player that's one dimensional, and then they're not doing the one thing you've been counting, or the two things, I would say. What
Hmm.
we were counting on Ben Simmons to make plays on defense and be a facilitator in the offense. But
Yeah.
it's hard to be a facilitator when you can't keep the defense honest. Um,
Hmm.
to pull one out of left field to say, here's a guy who's doing well in his role. Malcolm Brogdon early on has looked good
Yeah.
for the Celtics because
Hmm.
you know why? He's not just looking to hand it to Tatum or hand it to Brown. He knows he's a threat to finish at the rim, and
Hmm.
he'll just take you right to the rim if you
What
don't take him
that's
seriously.
that's an amazing trade for them. It looked good in the
Yeah.
offseason. It's already looking better. It, he just fits. He knows who he is. He can score. Like you said, he's not just deferring the whole time. He fits in really good there, and it could be what puts them over the top. Which they are just skating along like nothing happened. Good for them. They're playing really well.
The resiliency, man. That is actually, they are my positive surprise, is just
Hmm.
like how like the Celtics, man, just nope, nothing
No,
happened. Duck
just
duck on a pond, man. Just yep, we're
rolling
here,
on.
and making it happen. And yes, that was a great trade. But just to take it back to Ben quickly, and he doesn't really. I'm not saying he even has to be a jump shooter. What I'm saying is
Hmm.
he's still 6'9" and should still
Hmm.
be athletic enough to take it to the rim. Now, what the reason he's not doing it, I'm certain, is the boogeyman that is the free throw line. That's
Yeah,
the only
30,
thing I think.
33% is that's like my high school numbers. It's really bad.
Say that I can confidently say I can do better than.
I don't
Uh,
know if I can, but I'll give you credit. That you put me on that free throw line, and I lose my. I'm like him. I just lose my mind out there. I was throwing to the stands. It's
oh,
such an interesting, and you assume he's going to get better, get a little more game shape in him, but it's just very. It's not an encouraging start at all for him. And playing the big difference between the Nets and the 76ers is playing with Embiid was like the perfect polar opposite of him, where Embiid could stretch the floor out to the corner, out to he could shoot threes. So like you didn't have to sit in there and clog it up. The bigs, Brooklyn's got clogged that lane up, so it's making already small driving lanes and stuff even harder because it's packed for him. So they've got to find ways to get him going. And it's just been a really rough start for him this first week.
yeah. He's got to get it going. Otherwise, this will be looked at, for me personally, as one of the biggest collapses of all time, because I
Hmm.
can't help but look at this without framing it with the original trade. I can't look at this team and not think about Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen just being on
Hmm.
the court with Durant and Kyrie, and
Yep.
how good of a team that could have been. And all the other pieces, there's smaller names, that some complementary pieces that they got rid of as well. That it's like, wow, man,
Hmm.
you might have been better just rolling with what you had and letting James force his way somewhere else. But yeah, hindsight's 2020. But yeah, this
Yeah,
gamble so far has not paid off.
no, like I said, hindsight's 2020, but you look back and just how they got here and all the pieces that are elsewhere and how good they've done, and it's just yikes. It's
And
just the best
meanwhile,
way I can
the
put it.
no longer surprising Cleveland Cavs are doing pretty well.
Hey,
Last
your
I checked, I think they were
team,
the
yeah,
second. The Cavs are, yeah, they
they're
could be.
Donovan Mitchell. We knew he was good, and he's had to do it without not Colin Sexton, who's the guy they traded Colin Sexton. I can't think of his name right now.
Garland.
Garland's barely played 13 minutes. He had that eye injury in the first game. Colin Sexton with those bigs is unbelievable, and each of them's a little different. One's rolling. Kevin Love's picking and popping. Mobley can mix it up both ways. His stats with him, it's like 1.3 points per possession when they get him in pick and roll and go. Like it's disgusting. And he's scoring 30 some points a game right now. Like good for that was the Jazz blowing up their team worked out really well for Cleveland. And we'll roll it into that. There's my last surprise team, and we're going to talk about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kev. Did did the Jazz in the summer just blow their whole team up?
They blew up most of it. They kept apparently no, they did it was a reload, not a rebuild,
I
apparently. We just didn't know.
They traded Gobert to Minneapolis to make the Twin Towers up there. They traded Mitchell to Cleveland, and all they've done is started 4-1. They were one of the teams that was in Tankapalooza. They were gonna like maybe your number one pick outside maybe Oklahoma City. They're 4-1 with wins over Denver, Minnesota, and the Pelicans. Those are good wins. This again, I thought this was supposed to be a rebuild, but apparently it's just we're just gonna reload. We're gonna do this with some other guys.
Yeah, the vultures were circling, I was like, okay, where are we going to see these last couple pieces? Because they still had some valuable guys on that roster, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking, okay, by the trade deadline, everything must go, and Utah is going to be sitting there with the very Danny Ainge-esque bundle of riches. Danny Ainge is going to be
Hmm.
sitting in the cave on top of his pile of
Right?
draft
Yeah,
picks.
100%. Yeah.
That's what I envisioned would be happening, but no, here they are beating teams like one of my other pleasant surprises so far, the Pelicans,
Hmm.
who are a very good team. I don't know if you haven't had a chance to watch them play right now, you're missing out.
They're
Um,
fun, man. They're fun.
Very fun team to watch, and surprisingly, yeah. I don't. So let me ask you this: do you think it's fool's gold in Utah?
I don't think it's sustainable. I think it's a little fool's gold, but I think they're actually better than they are. Laurie McCannon's having a career year. His stats are off the charts. They're better than they've ever been. Clarkson's scoring the most points he's ever had. It's and then you still got guys like Conley floating around there. The question is, are th- this is supposed to be a rebuild? They're getting into the lottery. 4 wins right now, like those 4 wins can cost you big time. Like come ping pong ball time next summer, those 4 wins could be the difference between having, the best odds and like the fifth best odds.
Yep.
So the question, like, I think it's fool's gold, but the question from the management standpoint is they were supposed to suck and they were going to trade guys like Clarkson and Mike Conley, get them out of there. What do you do? Like,
Do you,
they're,
do
now,
you,
now the good thing is their value is an all time high, but everybody still knows like you're trying to get rid of them. Like Clarkson's averaging almost 19 a game.
yeah. What? Yeah. Are you not? You're not going to suddenly become buyers at the deadline. You're still going to have
No.
to eh, deal with these situations, and unless you feel very confidently that you're going to get someone to re-sign, like yeah, you're not going to want to risk losing these guys. Not when they provide, especially not a guy like Clarkson who's adding value. Like there's teams come
Hmm.
the trade deadline who are absolutely going to need that backcourt
Yeah.
depth, even if they're not in a position now.
Yeah, and that's what I agree too. Him and Conley they can help a playoff team. They can absolutely both of them can. The question is how long do they wait? Because if they keep winning games, and we have this, so we come back next week, and all of a sudden they're sitting at 5-2, 6-3, something like that's too many wins for a team
Yeah,
that
it's yeah.
traded away their two best players. One who was a superstar for your Cleveland Cavaliers.
They're going to end up, well, hey, well, for the record, I for my sins am a Pacers fan, and I was just
That
going to
is
bring
true.
up
You are a Pacers fan. You
The
used to live from
Jazz
Ohio.
are going to end up in Pacer purgatory. That's what they're headed. I'm
Hmm.
telling you guys, as a
Yep.
dude who lived through this for 20 years, the last place you want to be is eighth or ninth in the standings. Your draft pick's not going to be good enough to help you.
Hmm.
Like you're saying all of it. When the Spurs almost collapsed against the Pacers the other night, I was celebrating that loss. Like, oh God, we cannot afford a win against the Spurs today, boys. So yeah, Utah. It's weird to say it, but this is kind of going against their best interest because I do not believe that A, this team is going to add anything to its current roster, or B, that it's currently built to be a championship team. So what are they doing winning games?
And that's exactly correct. You're either trying to win the title or you're trying to get better players in the draft. It's the fastest way. You're stockpiling. That's just how the league's built right now. You want either draft picks or you're winning. And like you said, pacer purgatory is a good way to put it. Like that's where they're at. Like because it won't be sustainable. But if they keep winning, and all of a sudden they're sitting there looking possibly a playoff push, or they're just outside it, you're talking the 14, 15, 16 draft pick. That's not going to do it. Even in a loaded class this year, it's just not going to do it.
Right, and then you'll have to deal with the more of those games you win, the harder it is to convince those fans like, "Hey guys,
Hmm.
we're actually gonna
Nope.
tank."
Nope. This ain't
So,
us.
actually, sorry about that.
Nope.
False alarm.
False alarm. We're out of here. Sorry about that. They're
Oh,
just it's so interesting just looking at their team and that they're winning games against. They're not beating the bottom feeders. They're winning games against good teams.
Yeah, it is just a shocker, and that actually was a great because that was my last surprise as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that takes me. There is a team out west that
Ooh.
we haven't talked about that
Mm-hmm.
is on your NBA podcast bingo cards. So if you have, are we worried about the Warriors? Go ahead and cross that off because
Check
we're
mark
about to
that one right out.
get
Yeah.
get into it. So, quick recap for those of you who just got back from somewhere. I don't know, insert Mars or under a rock, whatever.
Vacation somewhere. Yeah, phone was off.
Yeah, Draymond gave a really nice punch to Jordan Poole. Had a documentary come out. More recently, Clay flexed his 4 rings on Devin Booker, which I kind of personally just got a chuckle out of. Yeah, we've both been in some locker rooms, never one with this much star power. Are
No,
you worried? Would you be worried about all of this going on this team that they're 500 right now?
I abs-
Um,
if, I'm absolutely worried about it. And I'll also counter my own argument by saying if there's one team that can do it, it's a team that's won 4 titles in the last 8 years. I just we've both been in locker rooms. We've seen some wild stuff. Seen stuff. We've never had that wild stuff get released to the public. And neither of us were on teams that were that front and center where something like that came out and that's all they talked about. And I don't I'm very worried about it. I just don't know. I don't know if they're all there, if they're all on the same page. You don't know the lingering effects of that. I've never had it happen to me. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I assume it's definitely still there. But then there's more to it than that. We were talking about it. You know, Clay does the whole deal with Devin Booker, flashes the 4 rings. Like, absolutely, dude, you got 4 titles. However, Clay's stats this year are awful. And I didn't realize how bad they were until I really dove into it. He's averaging 11 points per game, 22 minutes a game, 11 points per game. What was he? She's shooting a whopping, Kev, you'd consider Clay Thompson a 3-point shooter, right? Like specialist, most likely?
yeah, I
Elite?
would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not,
one of the
no.
best.
Actually, no. Stats say otherwise. He's 28.6% from three this year, 2 for 7 a game, 11
Wow,
points a game. Like, that's not going to do it. Like, Steph's
that's
numbers are Steph is Steph. Steph's wild. Wiggs having a good year. Poole's down a little bit. Clay he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's sixth on the team in scoring per game. Sixth right now.
and it's pretty crazy, and I wonder how much now. I do think Clay will score more than I think he'll get
Yeah.
that average up. I definitely think that. But I do wonder how much of this has been lingering because these guys they weren't getting along before the sucker punch, and a lot of them, Clay
Mm-hmm.
specifically, was not getting along with Jordan Poole. Do you remember when he won that 3-point contest? Where was it? Was it in Japan? Where did Clay won a 3-point contest
Mm-hmm.
recently? And he one of the comments he said, which just kind of got a chuckle out of people at the time, was it was finally nice to silence Jordan Poole. And then later on in the same
Mm-hmm.
interview, Jordan comes up with a little microphone. He's just having some fun. And Clay Thompson looks at the report. He says, "Oh, now he's after your job too." And so I say all that to say that I wonder
It's
how much is Jordan Poole just living rent free in Clay's head, and is that having an impact? And it sounds crazy for someone like me to say, but like athletes are built on ego. Like you have to
mm-hmm.
think you're the best in the world to go out there and do what they do every day. And once that seed of doubt gets planted, it can. I mean, look at Ben Simmons. It's
Yeah.
called the yips, right? Chuck
The
Knobloch.
yips, yes.
Go. It's easier to find them in baseball, but we got Ben Simmons nearby to look at. This happens.
Markel Fultz.
Yeah, Markel Fultz. I'm not saying it's going to get to that extent, but I am concerned that until I don't think like these idea that Draymond's going to get traded to Lakers. No, I don't think that Jordan Poole can coexist with Clay or
It's
Draymond at this point.
it's so interesting because you've got the old guard, which you consider Steph, Clay, Draymond, that old guard that won those titles before those guys got there, before Wiggs and Poole got there. Poole's part of the new group coming in, wins a title with him last year as a blow up season, gets that mega contract. But there were rumors, whisperings, in the summer in the preseason about them not getting along, even before the flame out, before the punch was thrown. So it's just so it's very interesting, and I kind of agree with you. I don't know what kind of effect that's having. Is he having an effect on Clay? Because Clay's absolutely awful right now. There's got to be some lingering stuff between him and Draymond. Is there a fracture in the locker room? Or their guy? Who knows? It's I've never had to deal with something like that, and I don't. If it was behind closed doors, we wouldn't be talking about this. You wouldn't even be worried. Like if kind of stuff happens all the time. Maybe not that wild of a punch, that nasty, but it's I don't know, man. Like I would be worried about the Warriors, and usually I'm not. Usually this is a team like they'll get it figured out. It's Steph, Clay's Clay, Draymond's Draymond. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I will say this for them: they have built themselves a nice little bridge into the future, though. With Kuminga, Wiseman, Poole, we
Mhm.
talked about a reload earlier. Um, uh, Man, could I could see the Warriors being a threat for years to come. But as far as their chances to repeat this year,
Yeah.
this could be a stumble year until they can clear out that clubhouse.
I would agree with that. You also hit on a good point there. How about that? Where injuries take out Clay, take out Steph for a couple. They go back to back seasons where they're not any good, and then they just Wiseman, Kaminga just fall right into that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And we got a comment here, Meg. Thank you. Draymond decking pool is bad for the culture of the team. Don't care what anyone says. I have no disagreement with that. I think we talked about before. We both have seen some fights. Usually, I don't know. I have personally, maybe I'm just lucky. That was more sucker punched than I had seen before. But
Yeah, I would say this. You've seen pushing shove. I've seen guys get punched. That was dirty at the highest level. And Trev again brings up a good comment here. Could they move on from Draymond? Do you? So I'm going to pose that one to you, Kevin. Do you think they could move on from Draymond?
Hypothetically, yes. I would be interested in knowing who the suitors are for Draymond. The only
Mm,
rumor I've heard, and I think it's ridiculous, is the Lakers. Not to say that the Lakers maybe couldn't use some of the things that Draymond brings to a team, but because they have way bigger problems to hand.
yeah.
Like, what do they
Also,
need? A third person on the floor that no one's going to
mhm.
guard from the perimeter? No, thank you.
You can have all those
Go ahead.
playmakers on the floor, and they'll just pass it around the whole time and take a shot clock
Yeah,
violation.
yeah, they could actually do a pretty solid Harlem Globetrotter routine
Oh,
with
absolutely. Put
dude,
him on
they
the
could do
floor.
yeah, they could do some crazy passes. But I don't like what and here as Megan's asking the question that I am trying to get like what's the package? What are you willing to offer to get Draymond?
It's man,
What
he fills such a role for them, that playmaking role, and their offense is so unique, and him and Steph and Clay are so ingrained in it. It'd be I don't know who could replace that spot. To be able to play make like him, run those split cuts, the ball screens, the handles, and then he's so underrated defensively. That's where he's unbelievable. Watching him defensively when you get starting watching into his scrams and his rotations and the switches and him calling and barking it out, like he fills such a unique role that goes beyond. He's averaging 6 points a game. Like you just look at a box score and you're like, that's nothing, but that's not. He fills such a
yeah.
different role, for them. And I don't know. I don't know who could do it.
Like
I really don't.
yeah, I don't know what the now I know who yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, man, Draymond would solve Brooklyn's problems right now if they could
Hmm.
somehow convince someone to they could convince just one more person to take a chance on Ben Simmons and get him out the
Right.
door and get Draymond in. Uh
There's a good we're gonna pull all the way back to the first segment. Should Ben Simmons should be more like Draymond Green. Like, be an elite defender, like a facilitator, dribble handoffs, ball screens, the split cuts, setting ball. He should be setting ball screens for Kyrie. He can't shoot the ball, but he can play make it at a high level. Like
yep.
he doesn't have to destroy that offense. While like Draymond averages nothing per game, but we've never talked about the Warriors' offense as being awful, or him bogging it down. Now, Steph Curry can hit a three from right here into the Chase Center, a million miles away. But
Yeah, but I mean, you make a good point that if Ben is looking for inspiration, he could look no further, I think, than Draymond for some pointers. Maybe not the locker room stuff though, huh?
No, I wouldn't.
Probably don't look
Probably
at all the
shouldn't.
tape.
Probably shouldn't do that.
So since we're on the topic of the Warriors, they actually have a game in about 20 minutes. So I was thinking
It
we
is
could
a.
preview that,
It is about to start. West
talk
Coast
about it.
basketball. It's fantastic.
I love it so much. It keeps me up all night. So you can't see us, but we can see uh the pick what is this called here again? I've not forgotten the
Picks.
name.
It's the old pick center is what it
Pick
is.
center. Thank you. Well, it's looking like 73% for Golden State. That kind of
Yep.
surprised me. No one's given Miami any credit for what
Nope.
they did last night against Portland.
No. Yeah.
Um,
They gave for anybody that doesn't know they gave Portland their first loss last night.
yeah.
It's just kind of looking at these stats here. They're Miami way better defensively. Their offense is also struggling way more. Golden State's averaging 14 more points per game. It's interesting. Miami is so much better with Bam on the floor than when he's off the floor. They're getting massacred when he's off the floor right now. So he's averaging, I think it was roughly 35 minutes a game, but when he's off the floor, it's bad news for him.
Yeah, he is doing a lot. A lot of those highlights that I watched of the Miami Portland game were just Bam playing volleyball
Hmm.
for like 30 seconds to finally get a putback rebound. Yeah, he's doing a lot. And yeah, and I can see how the Warriors would be the favorite here. I'll be honest with you. If I don't, what was the
Uh,
spread? I, go ahead.
Spread is, let's see here. I think it's 6. Yeah, spread
Yep.
is 6. So the Warriors are favored by 6. It's a home game for them. It makes the most sense with them having a better. Their offense is quite a bit better. Kyle Lowry's not playing great for the Heat right now either, which that one's been interesting. Like you're 2 years in now on that one, and he just hasn't put it all together. They haven't got what they thought they were getting there,
Yep.
which has been a big problem. I'm pulling up their stats right now. Jimmy Butler
Yeah.
leading the team. Heroes playing good. Yeah, Bam's averaging almost. He's just a shade under 35 minutes a game, and when he's off the floor, their numbers just awful. Defensively, they're
Off
awful. Hmm.
off a cliff, which means yeah, they're probably in for a long night tonight. Um,
Yeah, I like that Warriors -6. Like I think the Warriors going to win that game tonight. They're so much more high powered offensively.
yeah, I would put them. I would put them to cover. Maybe later on in the year. I don't know. Like this would be. I don't know. I don't like where Miami's at right now. Like I said, I like what they did last night, but I don't know
Yeah,
I don't like where they're at for this matchup.
they
So
had a big time win last time. I mean, they beat Portland. They went to Portland and beat them by dang, it's 31ish. But now like I told you earlier, Damian Lillard strained his calf in the third quarter and went out, so their number one player. But Miami's split recently with Toronto, lost to Boston. Why did I just said Boston like with an
I like it.
accent? That was why I'm not even never even
Put
been
a
there. That was
just put a
wild.
Chip Kelly or a Brian Kelly
Yeah,
there.
Brian Kelly down there with his southern accent. Oh man, they open the season, they lose to Chicago. It's interesting. Like just, I like Miami. I'm actually a huge Jimmy Butler fan. I'm a huge Jimmy Butler fan, but I'm going with the Warriors tonight for sure. In the game, like you said, it tips off here in 15 minutes.
Yeah, which again, yeah, Jimmy needs his credit. And we all know, I shouldn't say we all know. I know that Jimmy Butler is a superstar, despite what other talking heads may want to deny. But yeah, I think the Warriors got a little bit too much offensively for the game tonight. And I also like them to cover that spread.
I
I
agree.
think
Yeah.
they're going to take care of business. Well, that takes us to about the end of the line here, folks. We appreciate you so much for joining us. We're going to continue to have some of these segments.
Hmm.
We'll have more segments coming on. Definitely going to keep going with the game previews and reviews, but
Hmm.
please be sure to comment. And we want to take more questions from you. So definitely want to hear what you have to say. So feel free to leave us comments. James, any final parting words for the people, and also a chance to pitch your stuff?
I've got. I guess first of all, I thank you for letting me join you, be a part of this, be on here. I really appreciate that. We're going to moving into the future. We're going to have more. I don't know if we can do videos or not. But we're going to have more graphic stuff.
Yep.
Where we're going to get a little more in depth. I actually accidentally found those heat maps today. The shot chart we showed earlier, that was an accidental find today. And I showed it to Kev about 10 minutes before we turned this thing on. So there's a lot of fun stuff we're going to do there. But again, thank you for having me, man. And
Yeah.
we're going to have some fun with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for coming. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. And thanks all of you for watching. James, do you do anything else? You have any other podcasts you want to pitch before I hang up this phone?
I guess we never did talk about the fact that we are mortal enemies.
Yeah.
I do host the Titans Tilt podcast. I'm a mega Tennessee Titans fan, so I will pump that one up here. And so I am sorry, Kev. I haven't got
Yeah.
to apologize to you in person. We did send Matt Ryan into an early retirement, so I am really sorry there, bud.
Oh, yeah. See, this is why I saved that for the end. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Yes, and I am Kev. You can find me on the Indie Intercept podcast. I also run a little show called Bite Size Sports. And you can find us here on The Bounce every Thursday at
Mhm.
9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. We'll be here and we will see you then. Thank you so much.
Yep. Take care, guys.